leaking top insider stock trades every day until they stop us. Remember, the vast majority of insider trades are totally useless. We are only trying to find those highest signal insider trades that can help us outperform. Specifically, we're looking for unscheduled transactions, so we're ignoring tax sales, dividend reinvestments, employee stock purchase programs, all that kind of stuff. We want abnormal trades, so unusual timing, when an insider is flipping from consistently buying the stock to selling or vice versa, a history of success, so when top insiders are buying stock and they have a history of buying stock before it pops, or they have a history of selling the stock before it drops, that's a huge signal. The size and quantity, if we have multiple insiders buying, or we just have abnormally large insiders buying or selling the stock. And then the price action can be useful as well if an insider is buying a dip, selling the rip, etc. Let's take a quick look at today's data. So we're coming in again, we've been pretty low in terms of insider buys recently. Basically, it's been downhill since the beginning of August. We're coming in a little bit higher today with 21 purchases versus 17 the other day, but we're still sitting well below the median line here in terms of insider buying, the percent of trades that are insider buys. So still a little bit of a bearish trading signal from the insiders recently. Now let's go take a look at the insider trades. We are going to, as you know, I like to set the insider returns to be a little longer, so we're going to look at the 6-month returns. We're looking at the most recent filing date that we have. Let's start with purchases and then let's sort by transaction value and go through some of these. So just taking a quick look to see if there's any names or tickers that we recognize, or if we have any where a bunch of insiders are buying. First, you can see not a ton of purchases. The top one being less than $1 million, so not huge purchases either. We've got Triple Point Venture Group. Again, this is one we've seen pop up quite a few times. Ace of Gold is one we've seen pop up quite a few times, so we'll take a look at both of those. That's really the only interesting one here. Thrive we might take a look at just because that's been a pretty popular stock pitch on Yellowbrick, or it was at least in the beginning of the year, which you can just head over there and type in the ticker symbol, and you can see that we had a recent pitch actually again in August and whatever this month is, July. So we've seen it pick up a little bit more again in terms of just a bunch of good investors too pitching the stock. So maybe we'll take a look at what's going on there. Let's start at the very top here though, and just start with Freedom Holding Company and see what's going on there. We'll take a quick look first at the insider. We can just hover over him, see his purchasing. So he timed this purchase pretty well. Previously, he timed these sales pretty well also. Looks pretty good so far. Let's go take a look at the ticker itself and see if there's any other buying going on. So now we have this doesn't happen all that frequently, but it looks like we have a sale as well. Let's just take a look at the sale to see if we have any explanation. So no explanation. It looks like this is just a pretty much a discretionary sale. It's not scheduled or anything. The chief technology officer is selling the stock. So we don't normally see a purchase and a buy happening at the same time. Take a look at this guy. Let's just pull out this chart here. Let's take a look at this guy when he's sold before and how he's timed his sales. So he's timed his sales fairly well. I guess this one was a very short-term dip before it turned around, and this one was a little bit of a longer-term dip there. Maybe he didn't time the sales all that well. I definitely don't think he's timed them as well as this guy timed his purchases, with this last one being right before this big increase, and then also he timed his sales pretty close to the top in both of these cases. So not exactly what you like to see. This guy by himself, pretty good buying history, but when you've got the other insiders selling the stock at the same time, a little bit of mixed signals there, which is kind of odd. So I don't know if there's a ton to do that with that one. Let's take a look at Huntington Ingalls now, and we have a huge holdings increase, which let's just verify that that's not some mistake. And no, it looks like you went from 110 holdings before this to now, 3,610 afterwards. No explanation down here. So a massive holding increase. We can take a quick look at his previous trades, just see if he's made any purchases before. It looks like it's his first time buying this stock. So let's go see if anybody else is buying it as well. No other insider buying. In fact, we have some insider selling at the top here. From an insider, it looks like this guy might actually have pretty decent returns as well. Let's see. So yeah, nailed the top up here. So again, we've got a little bit of a mixed signal going on. Obviously, a month has passed or something, so maybe something has changed, but this guy doesn't have a great history of purchases. In fact, he has no history of purchases at this company, but he was at this company previously. He was the CEO of a different company, and his purchase timing, not very good. So another case, we've got both buying and selling, and frankly, this guy's buying history, a massive holdings increase, which is interesting, but Besides that, not very interesting. Not really worth looking into anymore, I don't think. Now, Triple Point Venture Group. This is one that we have seen these insiders. Look at all this buying here. They're up about something like, what is that, 10%, 9%, 8%, somewhere in that range since they started buying, but they're continuing to buy, and the sizes are actually even increasing a little bit on occasion. So today, they both bought another $733,000, so $1.4 million in purchases. The stock is trending up, at least in the short term, and they continue to buy a ton of stock. Good historic returns for the CEO, at least. We can see the only other time that he bought was way back here in 2018, and the stock obviously went up quite a bit afterwards. So this is very interesting, continues to be very interesting. We've called it out since this purchase down here, so up about 8% since then, and it continues to be an interesting trade. ASA Gold Medal is another one where, now this one, normally Saba Capital Management here has just purchased so much stock, it's hard to really get much of a, just look at this. We've got 100 transactions just since May here. And it looks like they've got over 1.5 thousand total. Just really hard to, glean much information when they've been doing that much buying, trading overall. So we'll go back to ASA Gold, but we can see they started picking up the stock again, and they have timed this stock fairly well. Ton of purchases back here, a much longer term, play back here in 2023, beginning of 2024. But the stock did go up quite a bit there by the end of 2024. Let's see, doubled by the end of 24 almost. Maybe not doubled, up 50% by the end of 2024. It's more than doubled now, obviously. They bought again here in the beginning of 2025, and the stock's been on a bit of a tear since then. And now they're buying again. So, these purchases, not great timing by the insiders at ASA, but we see a big bunch here, which is all pretty much, Saba buying the stock and some other insiders. I guess 2025 actually wasn't Saba. 2025 was just 2025 and 2024 were all just these insiders. So it's not actually Saba that even has the good returns historically. They seem to be timing these ones okay so far, but this is another one, just way too many purchases from Saba Capital Management to really glean any info from them. And it looks like most of the high info insiders here, the high signal insiders like the COO and what title does this person have, and the director and some others aren't buying the stock right now. So I don't think it's particularly interesting. Now, Summit Midstream, this is another one. We've now seen Connect Midstream buy the stock twice. This is particularly interesting just because they bought $2.5 million just the other day, and they added another $550,000. And look, there's been no buying ever. In the history of this stock, nobody buys the stock. We did see a ton of selling here at the end of 2024, beginning of 2025, which fantastic timing because the stock is down 50% since then. The insiders nailed the top. We're now starting to see a little buying down here. Granted, the buying, again, is not from the same people that sold the stock. We've got Connect Midstream now buying the stock versus the selling of the stock, what seemed to be, the CEO was selling and whatever this guy's going to be, a director. So the selling, again, different people, but the stock's down 50%. We're starting to see buying. I wouldn't be surprised if we see Connect Midstream continue to accumulate the stock, with it down almost 50% in the last 6 months. So we'll keep an eye on it and just see if they continue to buy the stock and if that stock starts to inflect. But again, normally when you see these 10% owners buying the stock, it's much longer term plays. They're generally not playing a short term dip because they're not trading in and out of stock super frequently. So a longer term play, so you can take your time and just kind of see what happens with the stock there. That is most of the interesting ones that caught our eyes right away. Shenandoah Telecom here. Yeah, these people have just been buying. There's no, what are you supposed to do with this? Tons of buying, no signal at all there, really. Cooper Industry, we got a couple buys at Cooper, so let's take a look at that, see what's going on there. So another one with very little trading, only sales it looks like. So we got a couple buys back here. If we look recently, in the last 2 years, the sale timing has been decent. This one was obviously pretty good. This one was pretty good for the short term, so decent timing. If we look historically, the only buys we see, we've got a couple buys down here in summer of 2020, which obviously timed very well. The stock was around 70, and by summer of 2022, the stock was up 50% to over $100. And we've also got timing back here at the end of 2018. The stock continued to drop there for another week or two, but again, it went from $60 to by midsummer up to 80, so up 30% there in the next 6 months. So the only previous insider buying we've seen here, pretty good. The insider selling, not the highest signal. They did time the top a few times, but a lot of other sales that aren't as high signal. If we take a quick look here just to see who was purchasing, doesn't look like it's going to be the same two guys. We got McBride and Andrews up here. Let's take the 2020 purchasing, not McBride and Andrews. Let's just see what we got the chief accounting officer, CEO, whatever CSO is, security or whatever they want to call it, science officer, actually, probably for healthcare company, probably chief science officer. And then in 2018, we had just one insider buying the stock back then. It was a director. So not the same people buying again, but we do have a history of insiders with pretty good timing. And now who do we have buying? We've got the CFO, which there is some research saying the CFO is the highest signal insider. And we have the COO buying. So always nice to see the executives buying. They bought just under 300K. Didn't increase their holdings all that much. So when you compare it down here, you've got like 50% holding increase, 125, 95. That's a much more notable holding increase. So the stock is down 30% in the last 6 months. I think it's definitely notable that we're seeing insider buying. We're seeing insider buying at a company where they've had a history of good insider buying, but the downsides here are not the same insiders, and these purchase sizes are, the absolute dollar value is not a ton different. I mean, I guess $100,000, 50% less, so I guess that is pretty notable, but the holdings difference being a lot smaller, so a lot less meaningful purchases. But we'll see. We might see a few more insiders buying. I mean, look, there's 2 weeks between these, so especially if we start to see some of these insiders buying the stock again, it definitely gets very, very in. Let's move on over to sales now and take a look to see what we can find. So we've got the same. I need to also change this to bearish only. We only want to see what their 6-month returns only on stocks that they sold were. We've got Enact Holdings up at the top here. Nothing interesting. It looks like a very normal sale. They've been buying stock selling the stock every couple of weeks, it looks like. Just quickly gonna scan through these to see if there's any. Carvana, the CEO is always selling Carvana. Insiders at Carvana have been unloading the stock here. Obviously, it hasn't slowed the stock down as it was 285 at one point, and it's up whatever that's going to be, 35% or something probably in that time, 30%. Definitely starting to slow down though, as you can see. The insider started selling a little early, but not up all that much. It's probably not even beating the market since June, or it's probably pretty close to the market and starting to flatten out. So once Carvana turns around and the momentum starts going in the other direction, it's probably going to turn out to be something similar-ish to this. But I don't think there's a ton of signal in those insider sales. What else do we have here? Nothing super notable. We've got the CEO here at Walmart, who he's just a very consistent seller, so nothing interesting there. Joe, another fan favorite on Yellow Bricks, so maybe we'll take a look. I forgot to look at Thrive. Maybe if I remember, we'll go look at Thrive afterwards. But another one, Praetorian Capital, really good returns as a hedge fund, 40% on average. They've owned Joe for quite a while. River Road Capital, Praetorian Capital again. So Joe is another popular one, which I guess let's just take a look now so I don't forget and see who do we have selling the stock here. A 10% owner selling the stock here up at a high. In terms of previous timing, I don't know if there's, according to this, pretty good win rate. Stock tends to go down a little bit, 10% on average. So definitely decent selling. Probably would tell me that I don't know if Joe's gonna turn the stock around anytime soon. It's been flat to slightly down for 2 years now, and this Bruce guy apparently doesn't think that's gonna change anytime soon. So I don't think it's a huge signal, but a little bit of a signal at least, I would say. Liquidia Corporation, this one, a very popular stock, mainly because they had really good results on, I don't remember what the name of on Yutrepia. So they had good results on Yutrepia, so the stock is now way up, 72% in the last 3 months, 60% in just the last month. And we're seeing here, the red bars again tell you the size of selling going on. So we are seeing a very, very big red bar here after the stock is way up. And we can take a look at the last few years of quarters. $22 million in sales this quarter, which actually literally are all on yesterday or whatever day this is, on September 2nd, whenever that was. So $23 million, which is 10 times bigger selling going on right here with more insiders selling, is certainly notable with the stock way up like that. So huge selling after the pop. We also have, it looks like, I bet if we take a look at some of these, you can see they say it's like 10b5-1 plan, stock purchase, etc. If we take a look, we can just see if we can clarify anything here. So It looks like 4 and 5 here. So these are part of 10b5-1 plans, it looks like, which means they had scheduled these sales ahead of time. So that definitely knocks down how interesting it is. Though, there's still room to play with 10b5-1 plans. You can increase the size of your sales, you can increase the frequency, you can set the limit value of what the price you're gonna sell at, etc., etc. So it definitely looks like these are part of, at least 2 of these guys have active 10b5-1 plans going on. Here we've got the director. He's the one that I believe made the big sale of, $19 million. This one is notable because if we look at this, he's never sold the stock before. So he's made 4 purchases of this stock. If we tap into his name here and see, he has literally only ever bought stock. He's got 35 total transactions, all purchases, and all at quite a bit lower values overall. So this is his largest trade ever and his only sale ever. One of the main rules of investing, don't try to fight the tape. Momentum is going up. Momentum tends to continue to going up when it's going up. So one of those things where you probably, tough game trying to fight the tape here, but I think it's certainly notable that we've got a huge pop and we have insider selling. I'd be interested to see if the stock starts to turn around. It might be worth taking a look to either sell the stock or, never recommend anybody going short, but if that's kind of part of your portfolio, it might be worth taking a look at. Going back now, let's see if we got anything here. Encino, a director. Pretty decent timing over there. Not particularly great timing if we look at what we've got calculated here. Stock does tend to go down a little bit on average in the short term after the sale, but not a particularly large sale. He's made much larger sales before. It is unscheduled, but I don't know if there's a ton of signal really there. Did anybody else? $17 million in sales. Let's see if anybody else sold here. It doesn't look like anybody else sold. So not super interesting. Intuitive Surgical. We've got a couple 10b5-1 plans here. I'm just going to skip over those. The only way a 10b5-1 plan is going to be interesting is if it's a particularly large 10b5-1 plan. So if they're making a sale way larger than normal, or if they're turning it on after a long time of not having it on. So, in this case, this guy does have very inconsistent 10b5-1s, and it looks like he might have just turned back on to 10b5-1 because this is a pretty big, a year-long gap, is normally 10b5-1 plans don't last that long. So that could be interesting. Again, first insider sale, 10b5-1, I don't think there's much to look at there. Motorola here. We do have a couple sellers up here at the top. It is the CEO selling, which always notable when the CEO selling. Did nail the top over here, but some of these sales, not the greatest timing in the world. Overall sell returns aren't very good. Has made a ton of sales in the past. I don't know if it's really all that interesting. And he's the only one that's sold, as we can tell by $11.8 million in total sales. And then his sale was also $11.8 million. MongoDB, I'm just going to skip 10b5-1s. Cipher Holding, another, maybe not a meme stock, but like pretty close. Very, very high momentum stock. Very dangerous to try to short or time your sales on these. But it is notable, starting to see some selling going on with the stock up 140% in the last 3 months. Definitely worth taking a note of. As we can see, that the insiders timing not always great. Not always great here, but they have occasionally clustered up at the top. So another one to keep an eye on, but I don't think anything immediately actionable. Donaldson Company, the CEO selling. Always notable when the CEO is selling. The timing, though, historically not been the greatest seller ever. Maybe some slight returns, but this is another one. I just don't think his history is enough. I don't think the sales size is like anything crazy. 25% of holdings is notable. Let's go see if it's his largest sale ever. Certainly his largest sale ever. Sold a quarter of his holdings. In that case, maybe interesting. I don't know if anybody else was selling. Somebody else did sell. So I guess let's go take a look at this one. 3 insiders selling the stock, so that makes it, gets a little more notable. Let's pull out the stock chart here. Timing from insiders, nothing to write home about. Not particularly interesting. Who do we have selling? We've got the president, the CEO, and the chief legal officer. So 3 executives, that could be notable. A couple of the executives seem to have okay timing at least. Yeah, not great. I think in some cases, when you scan out and you look at the larger chart, you can kind of see that maybe the timing works out, so the stock does go down a little bit, just right at the 6-month mark. It doesn't appear like they really nailed any of their timing there. So semi-notable because the large sale and 3 insiders selling, but not the most actionable in my opinion. Let's take a look at a couple more. Should we skip through? Let's just see if there's anything interesting here. Another CEO selling. Looks like sold back here, which, you know, not great timing as the stock kind of exploded through the end of 2021. Not a great timing based on the return calculations either, so we can just move right on from that. 10b5-1 plan here from the CFO. Looks like he probably just turned on this 10b5-1 plan, but not a ton of signal there. Another 10b5-1 plan at Take Two. Chief Financial Officer, they've been selling the run up this whole way, so not particularly great timing nor particularly good signal. Let's go take a look. Let's just do for the last thing, let's go see what was going on at Thrive there, just because it was a popular stock. Thrive, John Slater, been buying the stock a little bit here. Timing not particularly good by any means, though has been buying over the last year all the way up from 22 down to 12. Not what you like to see. 3% holdings, so not massive purchases. The one nice thing you could say here is that insiders basically stopped selling about 2020 above $23 and have only been buying, but that simply has not helped the stock at all. So I don't know if this insider buying is particularly bullish in this case. That is all for today. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and you can find all the top insider trades at CEOWatcher.com.